I have tackled some pretty difficult topics in the past year, and this might be the one that's most at the heart of what I do as an artist. Is Poi cultural appropriation? And if so, what should we do about it? And spoilers, the answer is I don't know. But I think in the meantime, that doesn't mean that I and we should do nothing. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, we're going to talk about the thorniest of thorny issues when it comes to poi. I expect no controversy whatsoever, and yes, I'm being sarcastic. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all of these amazing businesses and what they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I have down in the description of this video. And special thanks to non-business friends of the channel, Johnny Howard and Lane Mochinsky. Thank you both so very much for your support for my work and my mission. So to start things off here, we need to say a thing explicitly that's usually implicit in my videos and many others as well. Poi is an art form that comes from the Maori peoples of Aotearoa or New Zealand, and it's an art form that many of us engage in without either acknowledging or even knowing that fact. As I've outlined before, poi has a lot of antecedents. Club swinging, Latin American bolas, contact juggling, and glow stringing have all contributed ideas to modern poi spinning. But we still use the Maori word for the art to represent what we're doing. So what do we do about that? What do we owe to our Maori forebears, and should we even be doing this in the first place? There have been several points over the years when the term cultural appropriation has been raised in the context of talking about this relationship. Now before you start typing, stop and listen for a moment. Cultural appropriation is usually defined as the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, or the culture of one group of people by members of another, and typically more dominant people or society. I'll cite two frequently used examples to give context to this. The first is the widespread use of costuming that relegates entire cultures to a stereotype. Examples include things like geisha girl costumes, costumes intended to represent Mexican or Latin American identity through the use of garish sombrero or charro hats, or perhaps most infamously, costumes intended to represent Native American cultures through the use of war bonnets. These types of costumes are frequently called out as being inappropriate because they reinforce stereotypes that a dominant group, that is, white Americans, have about a group that has been ethnically defined as other. This gets even more thorny with war bonnets because they're a culturally significant demarcator of authority, achievement, and rank. I don't recall anyone walking around at Burning Man or on Halloween wearing a Navy Admiral's uniform as a costume. The fact that we take regalia used for a similar purpose in another culture and strip it of its context, much less create a garish parody of it, just underlies how it is being used to define a culture as other. The whole point of a war bonnet is that the recipient has to earn it. Slapping it together either for aesthetic or humorous purposes is pretty disrespectful to this tradition. Another frequently used example is dreadlocks. Oh, the comments on this will be so fun to read. Dreadlocks are a hairstyle in which individual hairs are locked together into thicker strands and are found in the history of many cultures the world over. But they were largely forgotten in a modern context until they came into fashion in black communities in the 1960s and 70s, at which point white individuals started adopting the fashion as a way of signaling their adherence to countercultural values. When dreadlocks are worn by black people, they are frequently labeled as dirty, unprofessional, or undesirable. People who wear them might be asked to remove them in order to get access to jobs or their professional credentials ignored in lieu of their appearance. But white people wearing dreadlocks rarely face a similar stigma for using the same hairstyle, and few acknowledge that they almost certainly would never have been exposed to the style were it not for its adoption in black communities. So I can almost certainly guarantee that a lot of you out there watching this video are having some feelings right now. Almost certainly there's some anxiety, anger, or hurt associated with the issues that I'm outlining here. And especially if this is your first time encountering this term or these examples, those reactions are pretty normal. But before you dive into the comments and give me your many defenses and justifications, let me just point out that a lot of this centers on how the practices make people who've been marginalized feel. It's about seeing things that are important to them taken on by the people who've excluded them, divorced of context or respect for their origins. This isn't about whether people in a position of privilege feel anxious about their practices. It's about whether people who've been marginalized feel as though something has been taken from them. So what does this have to do with Poi? Well, despite Poi having come from a number of different antecedents, we're still using a term associated with an indigenous art to talk about a practice that is mostly performed by people who are not a part of that indigenous group. So is Poi cultural appropriation? Last year I set out to get an answer to that question, and I failed to get one. Outlining why that is can be helpful for understanding why this is such a complex question. My goal last year was to try and track down any literature written on this topic, to identify cultural leaders or elders who would have important thoughts to share on the topic, and or to uncover any kind of consensus on the topic among Maori people discussing it. What did I find? Not a lot, to be honest. Most of what's written and easily accessible about Poi as cultural appropriation has been written by people who aren't Maori, either claiming to speak for them or having consulted them to get answers. And as a historian, one of those things that got pounded into my head as I was working on my degree was the importance of consulting primary sources as opposed to secondary ones. Hearsay isn't the same thing as hearing it from the horse's mouth. I started following several performance troupes, individuals, and Maori-centered channels that featured Poi. I reached out to several asking for guidance or somebody who'd be willing to talk to me on the topic, and I got no replies. I'd even reached out to people who'd challenged me or other Poi spinners on these grounds to ask for guidance or help in getting to answers, and again, this did not prove fruitful. But absence of evidence is not the same thing as evidence of absence. It has to be said that I am a white American using research methods that make sense to me as a white American. There may be layers of cultural dialogue that I don't know how to navigate or even start on, to say nothing of the likelihood of there being reticence on the part of exploited indigenous people to talk to someone that they know little to nothing about. But there was something interesting about what I did find. While there's not a lot written about Western-style Poi spinning as cultural appropriation, there's no shortage of literature about other aspects of Maori culture that are being appropriated. Whether it's traditional garb being appropriated by cruise ships for entertaining tourists, the appropriation of haka or ceremonial dance and display by people outside New Zealand, or even the use of Western language in place of Maori names or concepts. There's no shortage of ways in which Maori people definitely are experiencing this form of marginalization. So having not gotten very far in my original mission of determining whether Poi spinning is cultural appropriation, I'm going to alter the mission just slightly. I think it ought to be less about whether or not we have permission to use this one aspect of Maori culture and more about how can we support and become allies to them? And to do this, I'm going to start by doing the one thing that white people fear more than anything else. I'm going to make a mistake. There's a meme that floats around online from time to time that essentially says that the fastest way to get to the right answer to a question online is to first pose the wrong answer and let people correct you. So I'm going to do that. Here in the United States, it's becoming more and more common to engage in what's called a land acknowledgement. That is, acknowledging the people who originally lived on the land that we inhabit, and acknowledging that they most likely did not vacate it of their own accord, if they vacated it at all. For example, here in DC, I'm living on land originally inhabited by Nacotchtank and Piscataway peoples. The area where I grew up in Colorado was originally inhabited by Arapaho and Ute peoples. I'm going to do something like this on all my videos that are on the topic of Poi going forwards. I'm going to include this stinger to acknowledge the cultural antecedents of the art that I practice. Many props used in the flow arts have been taken from movement arts practiced by indigenous peoples, sometimes without consultation, permission, or recognition from their original practitioners. Drex Factor Poi wishes to acknowledge the cultural relationships and importance of these arts in the culture that created them, and to express gratitude for them. Poi is a movement art created by the Maori peoples of Aotearoa, or New Zealand, and is part of a family of ceremonial dances collectively known as haka. Poi spinners the world over are strongly encouraged to learn more about the tradition behind the prop we spin and the culture that created it. Now here's the thing. This is the wrong answer. This statement was written without any input from any Maori people. I did actually try to run it by some people, but they never got back to me. It is something that I drafted up based upon examples I've seen of how my own country is working to acknowledge its relationship and harms committed to its indigenous people. And I'm going to get corrected. I'm going to be told that I did this wrong, because I did. This is the first step of this process, not the last one. I'm going to take that input and have it inform steps that I take in the future. I'm going to learn to get better at this. I'm going to do it by deliberately getting it wrong first, and that's okay. Most importantly of all, I'm going to listen to the people that this is most likely to impact. I'm going to hear what they have to say and adjust my work accordingly. So if you have feedback on this, I'd love to hear it, especially if Poi is a part of your culture and you have strong feelings about it. It's your feedback that I need to hear the most. To everyone who's going to be upset that I'm including an acknowledgement in future videos, I just have to ask, what does it cost you, me, or any of us to do so? What do any of us lose by having me do this? Food for thought. And in the meantime, I'm going to challenge myself to keep digging up literature on Maori culture, to learn ways in which their culture absolutely is being appropriated and the ways it should be celebrated, and what I can do to help elevate their voices in those cases. Because if nothing else, I kind of feel like if I'm engaging in this element of their culture, I should probably take that as a sign that there's a lot more to learn about and appreciate still left to be found. I'm real curious how this one is going to age. Did you get anything out of this video? Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to keep the conversation going and to help my channel grow. This video would not be possible were it not for the kind support of all of my wonderful supporters on Patreon, including these awesome folks who are signed up as my Flow patrons. They, along with the people listed down in the description, make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. If, like me, you would like to see more of the world learning the potential for their brains and their bodies by spinning Poi, you can support me in that mission by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There you can get access to a host of awesome rewards, like getting to see your name in the credits, or getting a special Poi lesson delivered to your inbox every week that is available only to my Patreon supporters. Go give that a look, and I hope you sign up. Thanks in advance. So what do you all think? Is it worth learning more about Maori culture and how we can be better allies? Is the reason I'm having such a hard time finding any literature on this topic simply because it isn't a big deal? Have you ever learned traditional Maori poi spinning techniques? Leave me a comment and let me know. Make sure to spend some time flowing today. Happy New Year to you, and I'll see you with a new video on Wednesday. Peace.